Gosh, we're here again. It's a Windrush, and it is the Portico Windrush Special, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. I'm Caroline Whitehead, Trustee for the Portico Library and Chair of the Public Programme Committee. Now I've got two fabulous guests languishing in my green room. I'm going to do the official introduction to them. I've got Jackie Bailey, and she's the founder of B, like as in the buzzy bee, U Personal Development Ltd. She's serving transformational coaching, workshops, seminars and retreats, supporting individuals, groups, teams and organizations with clarity of purpose, value, vision building and alignment. And her holistic approach is to coaching is rooted in being aligned to your soul purpose, on purpose or with purpose. I love it. She's centered in being authentic in all aspects of life. Jackie is a visiting teaching fellow at Manchester Writing School and Manchester Metropolitan University, and she enjoys experience over things. Her interests include reading, theatre, spoken word, diverse arts, personal development, travel, spending quality time with her family and friends. I don't know when she speaks and when she sleeps. Hello. Let me bring you in the studio. Hello, Jackie.
Hello, Caroline. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, no problem, no problem. I know you've had a busy day, and thank you for taking the time to spend some chatty time with myself today. Right, our next guest is Wayne Bennett. He's the founder and director of Made4Tech Global and a specialist in recruiting professionals within the technology, business, change and transformation markets. Working in recruitment for over 25 years, his experience in this industry encompasses many areas within the technology discipline. Recruiting within the technology space, Wayne has witnessed the change within the industry, encouraging him to advocate for female and diverse leadership and advise businesses on effective, diverse and inclusive strategy for hire. We do love an ally here at the Portico Library and the Zebra Partnership. So Wayne's passion for female empowerment and diversity in the workplace stems from his family background, coming from a large family where he is the oldest of 10 children. Yeah, you heard that right, 10 children. And having two children and 5 grandchildren himself, he is consistently reminded by his family what strong women. Wayne Bennett in my green room. Let me bring him in the studio.
Good evening, Caroline. Nice to meet you. Thanks for inviting me.
Jackie meet Wayne, Wayne meet Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Sounds like I'm turning into gladiators. Right, well, I'm going to jump into the first question because this podcast, I call it Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. And just plain and simple, Jackie, what does that phrase mean to you, standing on the shoulders of giants?
I actually really love that phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants. Standing on the shoulders of those that came before us is what it means to me. They, the people that came before us, the Windrush generation who we are focusing on, they really had to deal with and experienced a lot of things. Just imagine thinking, I'm going somewhere. Some people had never been outside of the district that they were from, outside of the country, if they traveled around the country. But of course, we also mustn't forget that some of the people who came over in what we now call the Windrush generation had been here before and to other countries because they've been in the armed forces. So people were giants in many different ways. Giants in terms of being able to leap over barriers that were put in their way, boundaries that people wanted to enclose them in, and being able to push through those, and making spaces and places available to us that otherwise wouldn't be. So giants in many ways.
Oh, that's a brilliant answer. Thank you. And Wayne, what does that mean to you?
I'm going to be very honest from my point of view, because if it wasn't so much for what my mother had gone through due to the Windrush scandal, I possibly wouldn't know as much history about it or taking as much history. I was definitely more of what's happening now, how can I move forward, rather than holding on to the past. So what I know now is definitely the trials and tribulations my mother and my grandmother would have went through coming over here and being able to make a life for themselves that allowed them to bring their children over. You know, if we're talking straight, some of the racism and things that they would have had to face to still look to us as children as having happy lives, when outside of their home, the struggles and trials and tribulations just for them to lead normal lives would have been exponential on what we live today. So from Giants, yes, I think they kicked those down for us, and they took, you know, challenges that would the modern version of us now be able to handle.
It's very, very true. You say kick down doors.
Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Literally in some parts. you knew my mother, Caroline, so you know what she was like. You know, there was nowhere stopping her when she wanted something. So that's how I seen life. My grandmother and my great grand were similar mentalities. You know, my great grand used to travel on ships around the world, and my gran ran a, best part of it, what we could call it, is a shebeen in Manchester that a lot of these celebrities back then used to frequent. So yeah, that's historic in the books as well. So there we go.
And I mean, we'll pick that up because people don't know what that means. So you need to give a definition of what you're talking about, but not quite yet.
Okay.
And I want to go to you, Jackie. I mean, we've touched on, from where you're comfortable to share. We've touched on the sort of Wayne is the eldest of 10. What was it like for you? I mean, what are we'll go to the next question of the highs and the lows, because all three of us were born here. So, for want of a better phrase, we are the children of the revolution, the children of the Windrush. My mum was a bit of a Jamaican hyacinth bouquet. Do you remember hyacinth bouquet? Yeah, right. So, like, oh, so which ship did you come on? And my mum would go, I didn't come on a ship, I flew. That's what she'd say, because she went to New York first, lived in New York for about 3 months, realised that her dad wanted her as a housekeeper, thought, no, and then flew to the UK. So she flew over, but she always says she regrets it because she missed the bonding and the camaraderie on the ship coming over. So for you, what would you say is your highs and lows for being a daughter of that generation?
Well, both of my parents flew as well, and they are not they're not like hyacinth bouquet, but they flew, and they just came in. They just about meet that definition of what is the Windrush generation when we're talking about people who arrived between 1948 and 1971. And that's the era that we're looking at. And my parents came in 1971. And the highs for me are the depth of Jamaican culture on both sides of my family. They are proud Jamaicans. I was steeped in the culture. Was able to visit Jamaica when I was relatively young, at 10. At that time, not many people were being able
I
to.
when I was 10.
Back and forth. There you go. So yeah, I was 10. My sister was 5, and I've been going there ever since. I have a great affinity to Jamaica. It definitely is Jamaica land I love. So for me, that's definitely a high, that love of my culture. I'm not even going to say my parents' culture, it's my culture as well. And just in enjoying that. And that's the place where, if I could be anywhere most of the time, it would definitely be in Jamaica. What are the lows? I would say unfairness, really.
Mm.
When we're treated unfavorably based on the colour of our skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the lows for me, where it's nothing other than sheer prejudice, discrimination, and racism that's resulting in unfair treatment, whether it's in education, in your workplace, trying to go about your daily business. That for me is a low, and the fact that we still are addressing those things now, for those of us who are parents, whether it's biological or in the terms of, you know, the wider village as parents, having to speak to younger people about what they may experience. That for me is a low.
Yeah, yeah, very true. I totally agree. Can't believe we're still dealing with this rubbish, to be honest. You know, it kind of, Jackie, do you sometimes go sigh and roll your eyes and just go, why? Do you just sometimes stop and just go, why are we still doing this?
That question's there, isn't it? Like, why are we still going through this? Why are we still having those experiences? As well as being a transformation coach, I also do equity and inclusivity consultancy. So in that, I do focus on race, and it's something that we always seem to be in conversation about. It's something that people are very uncomfortable with discussing. It's something that is there, and I just think, particularly as a parent, that one of the things that I do say about, and I am sad about, is having to explain to my child and younger people in my family and in the wider circle of friends about some of these experiences, that they will come to me and say, look, this happened to me. Someone followed me around a shop, and, you know, unnecessarily, because they thought I was going to steal. I wasn't allowed to get into somewhere. So that for me is a definite low. I mean, alongside that, we do have the highs, that some things have changed, and there's more focus on things like Black joy and Black excellence, because not everything is doom and gloom. And I think for me, it's around having a broader picture of that, but also being realistic about some of the challenges that we still face, but not allowing the challenges to overtake the positive things and the progress that has happened. And like I say, Black joy and Black excellence.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Wayne, highs and lows.
I'm just trying to think of if Jackie hasn't covered everything. I think highs for me would, I think opportunity and a different way of life. You know, would I being able to progress as far as I have in my career, the opportunities to travel the world from the opportunities I've gained in England, if I was still in Jamaica? I don't know, but I'd have to say I've possibly got an easier way in the UK than I would have if I was in the Caribbean. To, you know, this opportunity is taking me to countries around the world that I might not have ever seen, into organizations to understand how they work, and sat down at tables or boardrooms to implement or advise on policies for different organizations. So from that point of view, and that of my brothers and sisters who are also progressing to, you know, my six sisters are entrepreneurs in their own right. So from that point of view, I say opportunity to progress. On the flip side of that, I would say culturally, possibly limitations on who we were when we came over here. And it's only later on, as you've seen it now, where people are saying we are kings and we are queens and we have that ability within us. So I feel in some cultures, this is different. I see that they're told to be doctors, surgeons, things like that. I don't know necessarily the culture that came over out the ship, apart from working hard and, you know, getting you home, how much that was implemented into some children, especially my generation coming up, on you could be all you could be. And it was a strange conversation I had before my mum passed. She didn't feel she had the ability to tell me that I could be all I could be, because that's not something she heard from her culture when she came in. And I remember having a conversation at a round table about this, and I by accident actually said we rather than my experience, and then somebody else corrected me as their experience growing up. So I think that I think it's still in the culture a bit now regards our ability for how far we can go with the opportunities in front of us, rather than not having that self-belief we can be bigger than that. I could say the racism is there. I think it's always going to be there, but I always think that's lack of understanding of the individual that you're across. You're either ignorance to open yourself up to change, or you choose to be that way in the face of whatever you're understanding. So that's just me. I'm possibly on my own journey to try and make sure I can sit in any boardroom and see someone's resistance to change. But yeah, there's, you know, that's definitely been one of the lows. I think the education system, how they treated youngsters when we came over, and finding out certain things about the Windrush generation regards education. We was put in special schools because you didn't speak the Queen's English, so to speak, and you'd make your words would sound different. So you end up in schooling that didn't necessarily give you the best prospects, where racism was rife and abuse was rife. So these are things you're finding out now that sometimes your parents never told you they were going through. So yeah, I guess that's a potential loss.
To that point, just to say, it's interesting what you said, Wayne, around, you know, people not really thinking they could be all they could be. And I think another perspective on that is that people saw men and women and people who looked like themselves in all sorts of roles in society when they were in the different islands of the Caribbean. But when they came here, there were very specific jobs that they saw as for people who looked like us. Not that we only saw those jobs for us, but that those were the jobs that we were channeled into. So, you know, many of us may have had the experience when we go to careers officers, and the jobs or the courses that they're advising us are right for us, are not, you know, achieving our potential. So I think some of it is around some of the stereotypes that existed in society as to what were the correct jobs for us, and maybe not necessarily us thinking that those are the only things that we could do. There was something about who were the gatekeepers of opportunity. So some people managed to push through that, but maybe not as in great numbers as would have been possible if those gatekeepers hadn't been there. So I think there's something about, there are some people who will definitely achieve and excel and try and push through no matter what. And then there are some other people who, where it's like, you know, this is the role for you, as much as they might not accept it, their personality might not necessarily be that personality that's going to say, look, I'm not having it. I'm going to do something about it. So I think it depends on the person, I think, and their experiences. And you touched on that, I think, when you said, you know, you said this is my experience, but I just wanted to put that in because I think that plays a big part in terms of where people are directed to and the opportunities.
Well, if you take that,
I totally agree. Well, before Mum had, we were clearing out some of her stuff, and she still had some of her grips for any of the listeners, viewers, suitcase. And it was lined with newspaper. I don't know if you ever saw any of that. Some of them were lined with newspaper. And I remember finding a newspaper that was one of the, and I should have kept it really, one of the recruitment, you know, the newspapers with the recruitment information in there. And there were lists of jobs of what required to build the mother country. There were lists of jobs. And I think that was kind of the narrative that was put out there, that we need you know, factory workers and bus drivers and nurses and this, you know, there were all these different things. And so that set the narrative of we'll go over there and do what we need to do, send money back, build our purse up, and then come back and be kings and queens in our own country, not so much staying. A lot of people came over. My mum came over 10 years before yours, Jackie. So that was kind of what the thing was. The narrative was set, and then when they came here and they thought, well, I've done this for so many years and I want to better myself, even promotion from staff nurse to sister or whatever it is, the foot was on their head and they weren't allowed to. Well, no, because this is the level we see for you, but you can't promote anymore. It's only because my dad's not Jamaican, my dad's half Arab, he's Lebanese, and of course it's not connected to the Windrush. But the thing is, that kind of diaspora coming over, they came over to study, and the ladder was there already set. You study so you could be this, then you can be this, then you can be this. So the narrative was different for them than it was for some of our parents. Does that make sense? Yeah,
I agree with that on the narrative, and I do think that the recruitment adverts, what people were, you know, were asked to come over to do, definitely set the narrative for the roles that people took. That's the role of immigration policies, isn't it? To fill a need, you know, to fill certain roles in a country. And I think that definitely did, to use your words, Caroline, set the narrative.
Yeah.
And it was a narrative that they weren't keen to be broken. So
No.
that's why I think, you know, when you use the word giants, or when we look at what people have achieved, yourselves included, it's in spite of the narrative. It's not because of the narrative.
Yeah. And so that leads me nicely on to the next question I want to ask you. How do you think you have benefited? You've touched on it. You both touched on it, how you benefited. But I want you to expand, and not because I'm saying to be braggadocious about it, not a real word in a dictionary, but more to empower others that who may be still hereditary, are still sitting in the narrative, to think we can do other things. Life's our oyster. The world's our oyster. We can do so many different things. And we're three of us are in completely different spaces. There's a slight Venn diagram, I think, but still we're in different spaces. And it's joyous that we can come together and talk about it. So, Jackie, how have you benefited?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I have benefited. I said, you know, I was born within about a year after my parents came here. So I am the child of teenage parents. And I've talked about this in my own podcast, Align, where myself and my co-host talk about being the daughters of teenage mothers. So, you know, in addition to being a, you know, newly arriving here, being young, you know, my mum then had me when she was a teenager. And I have benefited from the educational system here, definitely. You know, being born here, going to school here, in terms of, you know, the entirely free access to education that there was. Although I hasten to add, I was the first wave of people who had a part student loan. But it wasn't a full student loan, and I didn't have to pay fees. So, you know, that has definitely benefited me. Access to travel, you know, having a passport that enables you to visit lots and lots of countries, that's beneficial as well. Exposure to, you know, in Manchester, what is it? Is it over 200 languages are spoken? So living in Manchester and the vast diversity that is here, culturally, the arts that I'm able to access. I'm really into arts and creativity, as you know, Caroline.
That's where we overlap.
Yeah, and being able to go to so many, you know, different things. You know, we saw each other recently at a reception and networking event where there were international artists there. In the past, you know, in the past couple of weeks, I've listened to Clive Myrie, the newsreader, talk about his life, and then I went to something else, and it was Marlon James, a Jamaican writer, and then, you know, I've been to a musical, I've been to Bridgewater Hall. So that's beneficial, that for me, because, you know, for mental health and well-being, being able to access those things, being able to access, you know, economics allowing, that for me is a benefit. And, you know, they're just two of the ways that I've benefited, I would say: education and access to different cultures, well, three, and arts and creativity.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Wayne, how have you benefited?
It's listening and thinking how lucky to be born on an island, considering the rest of the size of the world, that held such esteem around the world, from a Commonwealth point of view, and to be born in Manchester, that had such a revolution on the whole world from a music point of view. Manchester to be known around the world from a sporting point of view. So just that history gives you a leg up, whether you wanted to look at it or not. I could say I'm lucky to survive the generation where Manchester was called a certain name for a certain amount of time, but also benefit from the time when it was one of the magical cities in the world to come to from a rave hacienda point of view. So I experienced all that. And then to come out of there, you know, I've got a WhatsApp group with about 38 friends that I used to go to school with.
Yeah.
And the trajectory regards the areas we lived in, or I lived in, that was not where I am now, is not the trajectory people would have seen you. So I feel lucky and privileged that I fell into, by making the decision to take my life into my hands, and taking my child to school and going back to college, and then end up in, you call it a lucky, I was on a course, and the first week of that course, that was supposed to be for about 3 months. The first week I seen an advert for recruitment back in 1995. Went to interview for that place, interviewed, and ended up being with that organization for 6.5 years. And they educated me on a lot of things about what success could look like for you. Because buying my first house, my first company car, and traveling around Europe, only dreams could made up. And I look back now and realize I fell into an industry that catered to everything, my strengths, technology and constantly evolving, connecting people, traveling and going around the world. So from that point of view, I can only look back and think how, whether you want to call it hard work, grit, opportunity, grabbed it and ran with it. Would I have had this similar kind of opportunity anywhere else in the world? The only thing I remember my first boss telling me in recruitment, that if you can do recruitment, you can survive anywhere in the world, because it's about talking and connecting with people. So I always took that as a survival thing. Forget that I'd survived Moss Side and Longside and Manchester and a whole. Me going in somewhere and learning something that my natural ability would allow me to survive around the world, that was a big thing for me. So yeah, I think the high is possibly to be born in a place that had the opportunity, and such a thriving world-renowned place. And as you said before, Jackie, about the passport being such a document that has respect around the world, considering the history, you know what I mean? It is almost like it was a bonus to get the passport, I think, that allowed you to go around the world without being questioned as much as if you were born somewhere else, and the history that comes with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I recognize what's benefits and what's privilege compared to other people who grew up in other countries and the hardships they would have had to go through. So I recognize that.
Yeah. Do you know what, Wayne? What a great example of showing, like, you know, talking about where you grew up and the experiences that you have and going back into education, of going beyond the narrative that's set out for you, that other people set out for you. So it's not only in the Windrush generation, it happens in our generation, because the narrative
100%.
for people like me and you who grew up between M12 and M14 is not necessarily to do what we're doing.
I was going to add to a point you made earlier. Role models. You can either see role models or you can be a role model. And sometimes that being a role model is you have to decide that there's no one in front of me, around me, that impresses me. So I'm going to impress myself. I'm going to do more than what anyone expects me to do. So I think that ends up being your role model. Because I've always found that question difficult for me. Who's your role model growing up? And I'm like, if I told you the people who drove all the big cars and looked slick and things like that, they ain't naturally people that people would class as role models. So I could say style and, you know, what looked potentially visually good, great, but the lives they were leading were not great. So you had to make that life yourself and dream you could be when everybody else. I've heard the term recently, crabs in a barrel. You know, someone the crab tries to grab, everyone tries to grab you, and it does happen. People will try to grab you and keep you into a lifestyle because you're breaking away from what's supposed to be the norm. And I do believe that stereotype narrative has been progressed in the media, that if that's all we see, that's all we think we can be. So that's what I'm saying. It's a big mental thing.
That's why I didn't ask who is your role model. That's what I wanted to see. Ask you, how have you benefited?
To add to that, Carol, my genuine role model was my mother. She was the be all and end all, and in everything. I believe, because she believed she could do anything, even though she had 10 children, gave me the belief that I could do anything. So I have to say that drive and tenacity came from my mother, who you've met, Caroline, and she is a force to be reckoned with. And I think anyone knew that. But meet my father on the other hand was a complete different mentality, because he used to work with kids. He was a youth worker, and he was amazing at it. You know, he could talk to. I could go on for ages, but so they're the two I would say are me, or gave me the drive behind me to look beyond what I seen as supposed to be where I'm supposed to end up.
Absolutely. I think in terms of role models, there's different types of role models. You can look at people's attributes and say, that's why they're my role model. You know, people in my family who are focused and determined and consistent, the people who are principled, have great morals, stand by their ethics, the people who are supportive, that's very different to, you know, some of the things when people are thinking about the more stereotypical role models that they'll expect people to say. There are things that we can find attractive in people, and we can aspire to have that particular attribute because we know it's something that is valuable, and it's instilled something in us on a personal level because we know them on a personal level. And that's what we get. So the giants for me are not only the big names, they are all of those people who were able to go through those experiences and still show up for work, still raise their children, still show us love, still care for us.
Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I mean, I didn't want to steer either of you, but I just think it's a great message to put out there. You know, Maya Angelou said this, and Oprah. I'm not putting Maya Angelou down whatsoever. She's my unconscious grandmother as far as I'm concerned. You know, amazing. But then again, you know, Shirley May will say something that, you know, whatever sister, we're not related, but she says something that's just absolutely amazing. Or somebody else in my network, Dr. Diane Rainey, in London, and other people like that, but also really sort of close people, my Auntie Lena, who 40 years at Kellogg's, she'd be devastated that they're closing Kellogg's down, but she did so much for me and for other kids. She couldn't have kids herself, and she was just absolutely amazing, the nuggets of wisdom that she put out there. So yeah, I'm just so pleased that you've come out with that. So I mean, I've benefited in many ways, and the fact that I can portfolio from one thing to the other. 1 minute I'm off to the House of Lords or Buckingham Palace or whatever, and I'm not saying that to be braggadocious again. I'm using that word that's not in the dictionary, but I know that I'm glad that my mum, while she was alive, saw that I was invited to the palace to host stuff and present stuff, or to the House of Commons or whatever. But also as well, she's seen me speak at different events. You know, that's, you know, she's no longer with us. Like Wayne's mum is no longer here, but it's those kind of people you want to say, this is the sacrifice, and this is the product. For your sacrifice, I am the product. For you sort of flying into a grammar school that wouldn't let me have any homework, even though past 11 plus, wouldn't let me have any homework or study, just made me run around the track like I was a racehorse. She flew into and said, I'm going to take you to court for not teaching my daughter properly. You know, put a foot down, and made sure that I got a solid education. So, you know, that kind of heroism. And I'm going to flow into, because I'm looking at the time, flow into what makes you smile about the legacy. And I'll tell you what makes me smile. Have you ever heard of Partner?
Oh, yeah. Come on now.
No, I just wanted to put it out there. Yeah, because my dad, Mr. Lebanese man, couldn't understand it, but they had their own system. And so they had their own system in the Lebanon, and because he's half, he's Sierra Leone and Lebanese, and they had their own system, but they didn't call it that. But what I enjoyed as a child, shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it, was the drama around Partner. And when it was your turn and somebody hadn't put the money in. But it was a fantastic system. And I want to highlight the fact that the Bank of England Museum has set up it's like an exhibition, and they're connected with the National Caribbean Heritage Museum to show the legacy of Partner Hand and the benefit to the economy. You know, there are many people who bought their house just based on a Partner Hand, bought a car based on the Partner Hand, because they couldn't get the loans or whatever via the normal means. So for me, that makes me smile, because it emancipated, it gave freedom, it gave financial freedom, but also as well, again, because I'm mischievous, the drama around it was hilarious. So what makes you smile about your heritage?
The only thing that came to mind right straight away was dancing, and the culture of dancing they brought over, and in some ways still influences dancing today in shape or, you know what I mean. I can't speak to specific things, but I just remember steppers and all these kind of things that were just, as we used to call it, yardie type things then, and the dances that came over from them, you know what I mean. But the influence that has on, if you look at it, it's fun, isn't it? You know what I mean? They enjoyed life. That was where they got to express themselves, and it was consistently changed with the times, and it's still influencing all around the world, whether it's the music that we came with, the dancing that we came with. It was a way of life that was a lot more fun considering what was going on. So
Yeah,
that was what started me. And style, they were just stylish. Everything was suit all the way, you know. You just,
But
So
I think Jackie's got something to say about that because your business is personal development and health and well-being. That was their own well-being, wasn't it? With the whole dance and enjoying themselves in that way. That was kind of like a respite from everything else that was going on. Would you not say?
Oh, definitely. And I think this, looking the best that you can be, because, when you look at the pictures of, when people came over to England, they just look amazing. And I think about whenever my grandmother and her friends were traveling back to the Caribbean, how dressed up they'd be to go on the plane. Now we're putting on tracky bottoms and a stretchy top and a pair of flip-flops. They were proper. And like, even my tracky bottoms are a bit tight. So they're like proper suited and booted, trilby.
And the hat, everything.
Women in beautiful hats, like what people wear to Ascot. We're going with a little tie-head and we're not. So that, and being immaculately turned out, the feeling that gives you when there's not many other things that you can control because of wherever you are. You can think about, how do I look? How am I presenting myself? How does this make me feel? And it's interesting, Wayne, that you brought up about the dancing, because when Caroline asked what makes you smile, I thought about, those steppers and the dancing that they do. But the other dance that came to my mind, and I thought, actually, that's not Windrush. It's where people used to always be like rubbing off wallpaper. When Lovers Rock. You never know what I'm going to say. You probably won't invite me on again, Caroline.
That was the other thing I was thinking.
Lovers Rock. And that came out of our experience here. In fact, I was thinking the other day, well, mind going to a good Lovers Rock party. We'll have to have one. But the whole thing around the wallpaper, the crumbing off, because it's not scrubbing, it's crumbing when you got that wallpaper. So see, look how much you two are laughing, because that makes us smile. Whether it's thinking
I would just stay
engaging. You look like you've engaged in a bit. You had to pause then to reflect and laugh.
Right. I've gone all hot. Do you know what? Let's talk later. Don't disappear. I'm gonna put you into the green room, but let's talk later about creating some kind of Lovers Rock event.
I'm only coming if there's crumbing.
I don't even know what that is.
We're going to be on Wikipedia with this one, I tell you.
Yeah. Okay, listen. Thank you for indulging me. I'm going to get lots of messages now. Thank you for indulging me, Jackie Bailey, BU Personal Development Limited. Where can we find your details so we can come on your retreats?
On Instagram, I am at BUPD, so that's my handle, BUPD. So it's BEE, and B stands for brilliant, excellent, exceptional.
Oh, so I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah, because we're all those things in our own unique way. So it's brilliant, excellent, exceptional, U, shortened to BU. So it's BUPD, P for personal, D for development on Instagram. I am also on Facebook, and the website is bupd.com.
Thank you. And Wayne?
I'm on Twitter as Made4Tech IT.
Yes.
That's where you can find my handle. Also, the website is www.Made4TechGlobal.com. And outside of that, I think you could find me. I'm trying to think of the any other way. That would be the two ways at the moment. And again, anything to do with regards to IT recruitment and an organization that genuinely believes in an inclusive environment. And I'm happy to talk to them. Majority of my placements this year have been women into technology roles, which is something I'm very, very proud of and hope to continue to do for the rest of the year.
Thank you. You're both stellar representatives of the community. Right, I'm going to do some Portico messages. I'll see you in a bit. Let me pop you in green room. Thank you for coming. Okay, so of course, this was the Portico Library Standing on the Shoulders of Giants Windrush Special. And of course, the Portico Library is one of Manchester's lesser known gems, 19th century research collection, exhibition space, events venue, and oasis for reading, writing, and relaxing. Our latest installation, Weird as Folk, starts on the 4th of July. Well, actually, there's an election on that day, so it'll be on the 5th of July and goes through to the 2nd of November. Please look at our website, portico.org.uk. Look on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. There is a plethora of things going on there. And we're so pleased that we have the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and we've got development plans going to reunite the building as well, which is all very, very exciting. So, Windrush 76, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. My name's Carol Ann Whitehead. Please come back again.